Welcome to Investories. Whether you're a seasoned pro looking for that next step or a newbie investor not sure where to start, Investories unlocks the mindset, strategies, and techniques of high performers across business, real estate, and investing to help you level up your journey to financial freedom. This is Investories.
Hey, welcome to, this is kind of a unique podcast. Mine's frozen. Is yours frozen?
You look frozen to me, yeah.
I'll edit this. That's fine. We'll leave it in. If it went bad, we left it in. So welcome to, this is kind of a special podcast. This is a co-brand with Cedar and Porch Real Estate Investing Podcast and Investories Podcast. And with me is Shona Lepis. Lepis,
you got it, yeah.
I got it. I just said it all, and then it was all kind of... And you briefed me just before we spoke. Hi, Shona. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I love nerding out on real estate investing and everything, so I'm really excited to chat. Thanks for having me.
Shona has her own show. She's also kind of a wizard at seller financing, midterm rentals, and kind of the connection of the two. And that's kind of what we're going to talk through today. A piece of it.
Definitely.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, those are my favorite topics, so I'm excited.
That's your, like, tick, tick, tick. There we go.
Yeah.
Well, I think the first piece is, you're growing your brand, and I don't want to say brand as a bad word. Brand is a good word, especially when there's authenticity. I know Shona, I know what she's about, and I know how authentic she is, and kind of her access and her information that she shares is super kind of knowledgeable and super useful, and she's really gracious in sharing that. So it's not a bad thing. But I guess we talk a lot about mindset. I wanted to get under the skin of kind of is that been a conscious thing over the last few years in terms of growing that Cedar and Porch brand, but also there's the Shona Buys Homes brand. Is that kind of been is there a master plan, or is it like this is kind of necessity and it's driving it forward?
Those are all really good questions. So where do I start? I'm going to start from the beginning. So, I'll try and be short, but I've been a landlord like a very long time, and I used to be very private about it because I thought I'd be like egged or judged or, not, shamed somehow. So I was very like secretive, And then I did some courses, and I kind of was like, you know what? I'm a good landlord. I take care of things. And I kind of, not to say came out of the closet, but I've been a lot more public. So I used to not be like this. And it was very like just being able to say I'm a real estate investor with no kind of squirming, has been like sitting with that. So yeah. And then the names. So Cedar and Porch is kind of my umbrella brand. I actually used the naming service, Frozen Lemons, because it was hard. All the names I liked were taken. And then the Shona Buys House, this is more like the off-market SEO juice kind of thing. So, but yeah, I think it's been, being public about what you're doing. I feel like I'm doing it for the right reasons, and I'm really passionate about it. So it comes easy to talk about it. But I think when you're starting out, people often feel kind of squirmy, or like it sounds like your money bags or something, when you say investors. But it has been a bit of being so public. It's a little uncomfortable, I'll be honest, like putting myself out there like I do.
I feel the same. I totally get that. I think the other thing is like, there's often like a miscorrelation of like a polished kind of product out there, and then yourself, and you're like, well, is it all a bit marketing-y? And so that's really interesting.
Yes.
But with what's out there with Canva, like we're recording this today and we're able to broadcast this out to the entire world. So why not, right? I guess I don't know if there's a question there, but why not?
Yeah. No, the technology, it's pretty crazy. But no, I call it my PR when I'm putting myself out there. Like when I have a bad day, I stay off social. I don't need to talk about that. So, it is a little bit, we're all putting our best foot forward, right? But I think people should talk about more what they're doing and not be nervous about it. And it takes some, it's kind of raising your thermometer, so to speak, a little bit.
So in terms of what I think shines through, and a lot of great real estate investors, we've had a lot on the show, and I say that kind of polish, that branding, but what shines through is authenticity. And I think the two kind of fit together. I quite like that concept that, hey, why not? If you're telling a good story and it's the truth, then why not do it with a bit of polish? Is that something you've had to work at? Do you have a team behind you pulling the strings? What does that look like?
No, I'm like right now I'm a pretty small operation. It's just mostly me. But I think part of it was also like when I have a turnover, I didn't used to talk about, I repaired all this stuff. And then when I talk about it, it kind of shows like, hey, I am a very intentional landlord. I do like to maintain my property. So part of it was like convincing myself that I'm not this evil landlord, but, and I do believe, like, my background's in design and marketing, and I've always been of the kind of value-driven marketing. Like, I used to really, back when blogging was like the thing, like leading with tons of value, and then hopefully that leads to other things. But to me, it just feels more natural to be, I guess, authentic. Or when I share something, I'm usually kind of excited about it. I have to have that little inspiration. I'm not just forcing content for the sake of content.
That's so cool. Let's talk about your backstory actually. So, was there a moment you pivoted from? You said you worked in design and marketing. Did you pivot from that intentionally? Was this always the plan? Was there an escape the W-2 or?
No. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. As someone once put it, like, you're an outside cat, I'm kind of feral. I go back inside more. So, I grew up in California, and this is going to sound funny. And I thought, I'll never own a house. It's so expensive. Fixtures were just insane. And then growing up, my parents had they had a vacation rental business. My dad always said, I will give you money for a house, but not a wedding. I don't know why he said that, but I always
You can't live in a wedding show.
Yes, exactly. Right. I tell that to my kids, but so I moved to Portland a long time ago, like 2005. The market was really different. Bought my first house. And then I saw that I'm like, oh my God, I just gained like 40K of equity, and it was like this light bulb. I'm like, I knew there was something there, but I was kind of nervous about tapping it. And then but after that, I kind of started slowly building a rental portfolio. Just kind of very slowly, very traditionally, but I'm a big fan of leveraging your own equity with like HELOCs and whatnot, like one house bought this house, the whole thing. But I didn't think of myself as an investor. I just saw opportunity, I suppose. And then, we had a creative agency, and then we sold that, and they acquired me for about a year. And I didn't work out. So then the Facebook algorithm caught me. I did a course because I didn't realize, I thought to be in real estate, you either had to have a ton of money or you had to be like an agent. And I thought about that, but that didn't really speak to me like the investor stuff does. And I love the creative part of it. So I did a course, and the rest is kind of history.
What was the course?
So, it was like a course for women real estate investors. Like, the focus was, it was a good foundation, and I've been exposed to a lot of, Bigger Pockets fan, right? A lot of the concepts, but it talked a lot about private money lending and flipping and wholesaling. And so it was very good, and it's a great community. And then I've done other courses since then. I'm a big fan of courses.
Hey, investing in your education is one of the most powerful things, right? It's kind of key to success.
It really is. And I think that the communities that go along with those courses too, I think are really valuable, and just as much as, whoever's teaching it. So, yeah.
I think one of the things is then the belief it gives you taking a course, even if it's a couple of $100. It's like, yes, I can do this. I don't know if you have that same feeling, but that's a constant doubt in my mind, to be honest.
No, it is. And I think, it gives you this toolbox, right? And there's always more tools, and you have this toolbox of things to do, and community. When you have a question, they're there. So I'm a big fan. Like, I would not be where I am now without having done courses. And all the information is out there, right? Like, I've done a lot of self-education. I'm a huge podcast fan. I read a lot of books, but I think there's something about having like a program and having something taught in a certain way. And like, we've done the same courses, right? That's
awesome. In terms of, so I guess your kind of primary acquisition strategy is probably seller financing. Is that fair?
It is. Yeah. I do like DSCR loans, if it makes sense. But yeah, seller financing it's just such a win-win. And I don't love underwriting. I don't love banks. So, all the reasons we all know.
So yeah. In terms of how that's changed over the last sort of 12 months. Is it more competitive? Are you finding more challenges, or are people more amenable to seller financing? What does the market look like?
That's a good question. I mean, it really depends on the person and kind of what their motivations are. I think I don't think the expectations of value have kind of caught up with the current market. So, I don't think I think we're all expecting this. There is opportunity, but it's not like what I think we thought it was going to be. So I think it really depends individually, as a whole. I think, with the interest rates being high, obviously there's a lot more space for that creative stuff for sure, because, it's harder to sell if things are sitting longer. There's a lot more concessions you have to make. So in that sense, I think there's more opportunity.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that in terms of like the prices at the moment, and then reality. I think still there's like a void in between them still.
Yeah.
So a guy refurbed one of the houses in the top of our neighborhood, and it's kind of over the freeway, but they've done an amazing job of it. But he put it on for like 2.4 million. And we sat around saying, really? He's since lowered it, but it's like, we better get ready to refurb our house and sell if you're going to get 2.4 million. So I just feel like, I don't know, I guess it's kind of affordability driven. Like, how much can people keep creeping up that percentage and that payment? So that's really interesting. But I guess there's been a kind of race to seller financing post kind of rate increases, and that's
for sure. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. I think it's really like taking the time to get to know the seller. Is it a good fit? Like, what do they want the passive income? So they have a capital gains issue. Like, I mean, it's not right. I think sometimes you want to shoehorn that into someone's kind of like, reason for selling. But when I've done it, it really it was a perfect fit, and I wasn't trying to sell them on it. Right. And it was a good solution for them. So I think I had that light bulb a while ago. I'm like, oh, actually, this is really a win-win. I'm really helping them. They get passive income. They're postponing their capital gains tax. So it's not always a perfect fit. Sometimes people they need the money. They just want the cash. It's not, even if it makes sense on paper, it may not be right.
Yeah. That's seller, really interesting. Right? It has to work for the seller, right? They would take a little bit less money and the money straight away. That's really interesting. Is there a typical kind of scenario in Portland for seller financing, or is it kind of all the different variables?
All the different, I think it's usually kind of the tired landlord, like the last one I did, I got this call and she was just immediately like, I never wanted this house as a rental. I hate the tenants. It was just like, and we went in and talked to her, and she was just like, I don't want to pay capital gains. And it wasn't even like selling it. It just was a solution, right? I feel like we have this toolbox, and you have sub 2, and you have lease options, and you have like just, and then you're like, oh, well, this might fit for what you're looking for. So you have to really get to know the seller. And there's obviously like signs, right? Like if they bought it 30 years ago and they paid $40,000 and it's worth $600,000, like that tax bill. And a lot of times it's these tired landlords that are in there, maybe they're older and they're kind of ready to move on, but they've worked really hard on their property, and like it's kind of they don't really want to give that much away to the government, right? Which is understandable. And and if they're savvy, like they're actually going to make a lot more money kind of being the bank, right? So it's that tired landlord avatar, I suppose.
100%.
That are interested in
that's really interesting. Yeah, I think the tired landlord piece is interesting. I spoke to a guy who was offering seller financing, but since rescinded it, and he just wanted to downsize. He had a bunch of properties and wanted to just downsize to 1 or 2 and not sweat day-to-day management sort of thing. So that was really cool to like be part of that conversation.
Yeah. Definitely. I was going to say something else about, I forgot. I'll think of it. Sorry, I just forgot. Got it. But it's not for everyone. And again, I think you also don't want to, I think as investors, we like go on property, like, oh, it's free and clear. So you don't want to come in and like lead with that, right? You want to get to know the seller, and then kind of come back and say, hey, here's a couple of offers. You could say, here's the cash offer. And as we know, that's well below market, and here's another offer. And so, I think not just springing it on people, because it's also built on rapport and a lot of trust, right? Because you're in a relationship with this person for a long time. So I think that's our instinct to be like, oh, and there's a seller financing, and here's all the bells and whistles, right? If those signs are there. So I think just slowing down a little bit with that.
Yeah,
too.
It's almost like you've got to find that right person and then kind of just slowly broach it, not just jump in with 2 feet saying, can you be the bank? How do you how do you educate set potential sellers on what it is and what it isn't, I guess?
Well, I think, it kind of depends on the audience, like who you're talking to. A lot of times, and I don't want to be, people that are in their 60s and 70s, I think it used to be more common when rates were higher. So they kind of know that like own or carry, like what installment plan, they're often familiar with that. Sometimes they even bought like that. So I think kind of explaining it in a way like, hey, there's a lot of value to this, that you're going to, if you own or carry this, you'll get a down payment, or however you negotiate that, you're actually going to make, true passive income, right? When that, like yesterday, I got a call, the toilet was leaking, and it's just like that classic, and I got my plumber out, but you actually, and I think people go into real estate, they want passive income, but it is far from passive, right? So it's true passive income. It's secured by an asset. Like you put your money in the stock market, right? It can go up and down, and we all know in the long run, it's going to do well, but to me, it's a lot of risk. So it's secured, it's a way to potentially pass on like generational wealth. That note gets passed on with the beneficiary. I think the big lever is capital gains, right? And a lot of times maybe, you don't want a big pile of money in the bank. You just want that consistent income. Like that's why you probably had a rental, because you liked that idea. But this is actually the most passive form of real estate income, and you have to show yourself, like make sure that you have to sell yourself a bit, right? Because it is a relationship, and you want to make sure that you're making that note payment and being responsible, right?
Yeah, I like that. I think the challenge is like just that educational piece and not scaring people, not spooking people with it. So building that relationship absolutely is paramount to that.
But I will say, go ahead, sorry. I did get one call. I was with my son in the car, and it was a voicemail, and he started out, "I will only sell and own or carry." I was like,
ding.
Oh my God. It was just, I just about squealed. My son's like, oh my God, Mom. But he knew, he was very savvy, and that's how they wanted to sell. So there are sellers that they, for all the reasons we talked about, that's how they actually want to sell. So
yeah, that's kind of that's my next deal I want to do, is at least with some owner carry. Otherwise, the financials just don't make sense on most of the things I'm looking at.
They don't. And the other thing is, you can underwrite like interest only, right? And or more. So you can make, the interest only payments and then add some principal. But oftentimes to make something pencil in an expensive market, that's really an option that you can.
I think the other thing you said about the stock market, the other thing I don't particularly like on the stock market is I have very little control. Whereas a property's performance, there is a little bit of control. Obviously, there's market headwinds and tailwinds, but it's very difficult to control the stock of Tesla, right? The price.
Exactly. I can go to a property and I can fix the roof, or I can improve it. I can screen tenants in a way. I that's what I like about real estate, is I can control it somewhat.
I get you on that. I buy stocks for my little one. She's 3. And so that's good.
Okay.
But eventually we will buy houses. It's just going to take some time. Leave it with me.
Yeah. Right.
So I wanted to, a couple of other things we had on our list. One was midterm rentals. So you're kind of, is pivoting a fair way to say it, or you're kind of moving into the midterm rental space, which we've had Jesse Vasquez on and a bunch of other people talking about MTR.
Jesse's great. Awesome. Yeah. So I have a mix of long-term and midterm, right? So I used to have long-term, then I had some Airbnbs, and all the reasons I think we hear of, like the STR regulations can change on a dime, that's just, there's like high maintenance gas. It's just constant turnover, like as landlords, right? Like I think we all don't like turnover. It's one of the things we can agree on. It's just our least favorite part of being in real estate. So I kind of stumbled on the midterm strategy because of my Airbnbs when COVID hit. I think that's how a lot of people got into it. It was just like everything kind of stopped for a minute. We're like, what do we do? And then I realized, like, I was looking at my numbers. I just like the midterm space because it's that sweet spot between like the long-term rent and the short-term rent. Like we all know short-term is like the best way to maximize. But to me, it's like 3 to 4 turnovers a year. I can really maximize my rent and it's providing a lot of value to people. And so it just feels like that right strategy. And I know it's not right for everything. Sometimes like if I have a really nice property, I'll just keep it long-term. So I kind of like the blend of having a long-term and midterm. But for me, it just kind of made sense and I kind of evolved into it. But yeah.
And where are your midterm rentals?
So I'm in Portland and I'm in like northeast Portland, which isn't, they're fine, but they're not like super fancy areas, right? So, yeah.
And who do you find your tenants are?
Yeah. So, I would say the majority, like 70% is traveling nurses and they're here on contract. They have a stipend. They're paid really well. Then I do get the kind of digital nomads, right? I think COVID opened up remote work. So they kind of hop around. They can work somewhere for 3 months as long as they have good internet and a desk, right? So there's the digital nomads and the nurses. And I've had, guests sometimes where they were doing work on their house, or I've had, families come in, like grandparents come for 3 months to be close to their family.
That's cool.
I haven't done a lot of insurance claims. Yeah, it's really, and so that's it's a pretty broad spectrum of avatars that look into midterms. It's not just like the nurses that a lot of people talk about.
Yeah, we've talked about this on the show a few times, which is, so my house in San Diego is near all the hospitals. It's a 3-2. And I'm like, if we moved out, would we midterm rent it? I guess we could try it. But I just don't know. It's kind of funky like that. It's like, it's hard to prove the data, I guess. There's no price labs for midterm rentals.
Right. Well, I hear they're working on that. I actually have a call with someone from Price Labs.
Nice.
So I just reached out and I was like, I hear there's something in the works. Yeah, it's a little bit, you kind of have to start with your long term and then but so what I do, I call it my A/B test, because I've had long terms and I was like, kind of wanted to convert them. So I like digitally stage it or use AI to stage it. Then I'll put an ad out for like, here's a furnished rental and here's a long-term ad. And I kind of see which one wins.
Test
and then
the ads. Where do you test them?
So I'll usually, for furnished, I'll put it on like Furnished Finder, maybe like Zillow, and then I'll put, the long-term ad on different spots. And every time I've done that, the furnished has won out. But it's kind of like, and I don't furnish it until I actually, I'll have a contract. I'm like, okay, it'll justify the upfront cost. So that's how I've kind of managed that, cool. Like, because it is an upfront cost, right? So that's what I've done. And then, upfront, like, hey, this is staged virtually, it will be staged. And most people are fine with that, right? I'm always really
I like the transparency. That's pretty good. That's really clever. I'm going to try that when I go down that route. It's still,
it's really fun. It's really
still
fun,
scary, but I think that validates it a bit. And are most of your units are kind of smaller, or are they houses, or?
So my first couple were small, like, one of them is like a 1-1, it's under 400 square feet, which is pretty small. And then I do have like a 3-2 actually. And it's funny, that one, I've had mostly college kids staying there, right? And the last one, I lowered the rent a bit, but they'd stayed for a year, right? In a fully furnished house. So I was able to charge a premium and not have turnover for a year. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think the other piece that's interesting is then how the seller financing plays with the midterm rental. And I guess you've kind of touched upon that, which is just kind of running numbers, best case, worst case. Is there anything else you do?
Yeah, I think, when you're underwriting, I think as investors or, as Jeff Stevens would say, like real estate entrepreneurs, and I do like that kind of, you're kind of looking at the potential of a property, the expandability of it, so to speak. So, is there a basement unit that you can rent out? How are you essentially maximizing your property? So I think when you're just underwriting, a lead, you're like, well, if this went midterm, I think it's just like any other deal, but it often can make the numbers work. If you can get a better rate and, make sure you have a, monthly payment that works and you go midterm, it's going to cash flow like way better than like a long term, right? So I think in that sense, you can kind of craft a strategy that fits with the note that you're going to, give the seller and all that stuff.
So cool. Yeah, I think that it does get you to get creative when you're thinking about those kind of things. And that my I guess I'm calling it the hybrid strategy. That's kind of the route I'm trying to go down, which is long term to kind of cover the cover the costs, and midterm to kind of add a bit of a cherry on top for a multifamily.
Yeah. If you're just starting, I love the duplex strategy where one half is long and one is midterm, because then you're kind of mitigating that constant turnover. So I think that's like the sweet spot. And obviously smaller multifamily, but a lot of mine are kind of that hybrid.
It sounds so simple.
Right. But the other thing, just a side note, is like, so my last property was a duplex. I had this basement it was kind of creepy. Like there was no door, and it just, it was
horror
just had this
Airbnb.
Yeah, right. And I even had someone come over like, oh, you could never Airbnb this. And I was like, you know what? Like, what if, so then I furnished it, and the whole vibe like changed just by, adding artwork and some style without major rehab. Like I did some things, like I painted the cabinets and put some hardware up, but the vibe of the place changed with the furnishing. I think that's the other thing I like about Midterm is, that's not like when you do rehab, you're talking like pretty big numbers, right? But you can do a lot with how you furnish something. Do
you have like what's your strategy for furnishing? Is there like a go-to place, or things need to be in there, or how does that work?
Yeah. So the first time I did it, I agonized about like what smart lock, what TV, what mattress. And I just was like, oh, it just took me forever. And the last one, it was probably 3 days and I had it furnished, right? So I have my go-to mattress, and I would say, I used to kind of hunt and peck, like go to Facebook Marketplace. Oh, there's a chair that's cute. Now I try and order as much as I can online. I have a mattress. It comes in a box. I have the sheets I like. I'll just orders, even Amazon. I mean, I love local. I do shop somewhat locally, but I think making a list, and in my course I have kind of a checklist, and ordering as much as you can and really planning ahead so you can get in there and furnish it in like 2 to 3 days. It's totally possible. Yeah, but you have to really.
We did our Airbnb, and my biggest lesson was I should have treated it like a work project, not like a weekend project.
Right.
And we did it. Yeah. We were pretty effective, but we took way too long to get it stood up. It was a little bit silly.
Right? Because you're like, oh, I need a coffee maker. Then you run to like Target. Oh, I need like soap or whatever, all the little things.
It was just, I think for us, it was, we were up in Big Bear. So we had to get a sign off and get an inspection and all that stuff. We kind of had to go through that process, and knowing that, we kind of just round the clock out. We took all 4 quarters to get it set up, when really we could have been doing it a lot more effectively. So you mentioned your course. Let's talk about the course and the community around it, and that kind of circles us back to the brand piece. But Shona is like super active in kind of real estate communities, and is super like one of the first people to jump forward with advice and stuff. So it's really cool to see. So your course is launched recently, right?
Yeah, I did kind of a beta launch on it, and it's been growing. I've been growing the community. I just started a Facebook group for it. So yeah, it's kind of really geared for someone that, I'm not covering acquisitions, because to me, that's such a broad topic, and I didn't want to like skim over that. That's probably a different course down the line, but it's really for someone that has a property or is considering getting into midterms. It's kind of like, how to do a little bit of research, how to furnish it, how to get it up and running quickly, how to advertise it, how to market it, how to book it. And I think it's kind of all the lessons that, my first one took me a couple months, right? And now I can in and out. I know how to test the market. I'm very efficient. I get people in there. I think it's all the tips that I kind of learned that I kind of I felt like I downloaded my brain, to this course. So it's, video modules, and then I do weekly coaching calls. So I really, if people need help or have specific questions, and I do love that community. Like I think it's a great strategy, and I like to help people. So it's really helpful to be part of a community and help people along, just getting their first one off the ground.
That's so helpful. And it's building that confidence, isn't it? And that kind of muscle memory of how to do the next one and the next one.
Because the first one is daunting, right?
For me, in terms of courses, I've really pivoted. So the first real estate course my wife and I did was the Real Estate Rookie Bigger Pockets, and it was like started with 80 people, and attrition filtered us down to about 30. But it was very much like a seminar every week, and then some coursework, and then kind of group connecting, but not really. And now the smaller, more niche kind of smaller community driven courses are way more interesting because you get to speak to people like yourself and actually have answers and not just be one of 80 on a phone call typing your message.
Right. Right. Hoping there's time for your question. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. It's been fun. I never thought about myself as a coach, and it's kind of another kind of hat to put on. But over the years, I've helped a lot of people just like, if they're moving, I'm like, keep your house as a rental. Here's how you do it. So I've kind of done it very casually. I just kind of formalized it. And it is a strategy again that I really believe in. So it's easy to teach it, right? If you're really passionate about something.
Absolutely. I think that's what shines through, and that's what's really interesting is, I guess partly is my journey as kind of a investor, or at least starting to be an investor, is you start connecting with people that are passionate about what they do, but they're not, it's not just all marketing BS. There's marketing there, but it's not BS.
Yeah. No, I think I like to really lead with value. And if I can help someone with a post, that's great. Like I'm not looking for everyone to be a student, but I just think, I think that's what it's about. Right. And then you can kind of, someone resonates with what you're saying and they might, sign up. But to me, it's like, if I can add value and inspire someone, that's what I'm in it for. So
I love that. That's amazing. That's the way to go forward. To be fully candid, that's kind of where I want to get to. I want to be able to add value to people, and that hence the podcast, but hopefully that will be in the future of kind of, leading groups or masterminds or whatever that looks like. It's always good.
Yeah.
It's go for it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think it's kind of I don't want to say a calling, but like, I feel compelled to just share what I know. It's funny. I'm a really big introvert. So it's like very odd to put myself out there.
I'm introvert and extrovert. So I do a lot of like just writing for work, but I equally can, if I'm pushed, get in front of people and talk and all that stuff. I gotta kind of fancy it on the day, and I gotta be interested in the topic. I think I have a take on your point, which is you wanted to just share. I think that's the real estate community, the real estate investing community. It's a bunch of people that are all like I've said this a few times on here. It's like a curtain opens and they go, "Quick, come here. I've got the gold just here." And they want to share it because for the exact same reason you said, people that may not like banks or they may want to break away from the system. I think it's that there's a secret club, and it's people are like, "Yeah, come on in. You're interested? Awesome. Come on in."
Right. Well, and it's very intimidating. Even the word real estate investor, like you don't know that you don't need a bunch of money, or you don't have to be really wealthy, or I don't have generational wealth. It's really, there's just so much opportunity if you're willing to put in the time and educate yourself. I think that's the thing. Yeah. We want to share, like, it's not exclusive. Like I think people think, I used to think that. I was like, so yeah, I love that.
And if you liked what we've shared, reach out to us. So Investories Investories Pod. Sorry, I always get that wrong. On Instagram, give us a follow, and you can check out our YouTube channel. Link in the show notes. Shona, how can people get in touch with you?
I'm kind of all over, but I guess the midtermrentalplaybook.com is where I have all my socials, and that's my course. So I've got other properties, but I don't want to sit here and list
like this one.
But yeah, no, I'm easy to find. Shona Lepis, if you Google me, I'll pop up. So yeah, and I'm definitely looking to help if anyone has questions at midterms. I have a Facebook group.
We'll put links to that in the show notes on the Investories version. And I guess this will go out on your show as well, maybe?
Yes, for sure. Yeah,
awesome.
Definitely. I will definitely. I love that. Yeah.
Shona, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, this has been really fun. Thanks for having me on.
We got to have you on again, I think. Appreciate and maybe we keep talking about doing case studies and like running through a deal. I think that would be awesome if you're down for that.
Oh, definitely. I just actually even have a deck where it has a couple like long-term, midterm, right? Really breaks down numbers.
Oh, that's amazing. There you go. That's super organized. Yeah, we thought about springing it on people, on guests, but we thought that would be very unpopular, right? So talk me through all of your numbers.
Right. But I think you get on, you hear bigger pockets of people have all these deals. You're like, well, how did they do that? Right. It's just nice to dive into like a deal and talk about the strategy and actual
absolutely.
Numbers.
Yeah. I had that same thought. It's like, wait, Go back. Can I ask a question? No, you can't. It's a podcast.
Right.
Shona, thank you so much for today. Really appreciate your time. And we'll be back next week.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching Investories. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.